Hello, folks. Welcome to the 26th episode of Al's Joint. Today, I will have with me again Dennis Painter, a longtime union activist from Xenia, Ohio, as we tackle Trump's decision to put U.S. military personnel in Washington, D.C. Also, we'll continue our investigation into the Epstein scandal that's rocking this country to its core. In addition to that, I will touch briefly on TikTok's attempt to censor my podcast. It won't happen. So as we pay homage to Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, you gotta dance to keep from crying. Let's take the gloves off and let's get at it. How you doing, Mr. Painter?
I'm doing well today, thank you. And how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm trying to figure out all this crime that's happening in D.C. As we're going to take a look real quick at the violent crime that's happening in Washington, D.C.
49ers declaring it a riot.
Cruiser 5 to 50, be advised, Capitol Police 1 advised they're trying to breach and get into the Capitol.
We have a breach of the Capitol! Breach of the Capitol! We need to hold the doors of the Capitol. I need police support. We lost the line. We lost the line. All MPDs get back! All MPDs get back up to the upper deck! All MPDs get back to the upper deck!
They were peaceful people. These were great people. The crowd was unbelievable. And I mentioned the word love, the love in the air. I've never seen anything like it.
So, Mr. Painter, you've seen the violence in Washington, D.C., and you know that Donald Trump has sent the militia. He sent I want to call them the Trump goons to Washington, D.C., to be able to create a diversion over this whole Epstein scandal. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the first thought is let's not take our attention away from the Epstein situation, because there's many women out there that deserve justice. And I agree, it's a diversion and we shouldn't allow it to happen. But in terms of Washington being turned into a police state, and the reasons for it is pretty ridiculous. It's, for what I'm seeing, is Trump is lining everything up to take over the United States as a dictator. If you look at what Trump is doing, look at what he's done in L.A. He moved in the Marines and the National Guard. He moved them in, and with overlooking anything the governor said or wanted to do, when it was his authority to do it. And now he's wanting to do that in Washington, D.C., and he's always doing it on the premise that, these are very bad people. He always says the same thing. They're very bad and we got to do something, and I'm gonna fix it. Well, he's testing America to see what we will tolerate. Okay, will we tolerate him moving in the Marines into Los Angeles? Will we tolerate him taking over Washington, D.C. based off the homeless, people and crime? What will we tolerate? Because from here, if we tolerate that, he's going to move on to the other cities, and he's aligning things up to where the voter numbers are concentrated, and then have a military force in place there. And in my opinion, either not have an election at all, claim some kind of emergency, or intimidate people from going in. That's my opinion. But if you look at what happened in Cuba and what Castro did in Cuba, okay, it was all, we're going to take the country over to make it better. And as soon as he was put in power, he took everyone's guns away. And he sent people in military from door to door and took people's guns away. That's what's going to happen here, because you can't have a well-armed militia if you're going to be a dictator. And I think we're headed towards a second Revolutionary War, and I think he's fueling the flames for it. Before, we had to fight the redcoats, and he's pushing it to where we have to fight the red hats now, and that's a shame, because family will be killing family. Americans will be killing Americans.
Well, I know that there were thousands of red hats in Washington, D.C. on the January 6th riots, and he failed to act. And on top of that, he ended up pardoning all those individuals who were guilty of the deaths and injuries of police officers. What they did to the Capitol, people actually looked the damage they caused, literally millions of dollars worth of damage. But he pardoned those folks. And so I guess the crime rate in D.C. was bad for at least one day. And I'm not saying that there's no crime in D.C. There's crime in every city. There's an area in every major city that somebody could say, I don't want to walk in that area at night. But we can talk about the reasons for that on another podcast, but that exists everywhere. In red cities, in blue cities, the dynamic doesn't change at all. Actually, when you look at the statistics, if you look at the top 50 cities with crime, in the last 2 years, Washington's in the bottom half. So that tells you something, regardless of all the lies he tells. So, but I do understand the argument, though, that we had Mussolini, we had Hitler, we had Castro. They all followed a similar plan. And you're right. I believe that our forefathers anticipated that there was going to be a Donald Trump. What they didn't anticipate was that the other two branches of government would follow behind him blindly, and that the American people would allow him to go untouched to get this far. But those things are something that we kind of looked at as history, like, they could never happen here. Well, it's here. We're not saying it can happen here. It's here already.
It is here.
It's here. So the only question is, are folks going to stand up and keep their country, or are they going to hand it over to the red hats and those far right-wing nuts? Let's jump into the Epstein, because I know that there's a lot of diversions going on, right? But the whole issue with Ghislaine Maxwell being moved, and now it looks like they're trying to set it up so that they could get her out. At some point, they're going to try to get her out of jail, because she's the key. And you can't have the key locked up thinking they're going to be there for the rest of their lives, because then there is no motivation to keep your mouth shut. So at some point, she's going to leave prison. I believe they've set that up already.
I wasn't surprised that she was moved to a minimum security as quickly as she was. Okay. I wasn't surprised about them doing it, but I was surprised about how quickly they did it. She was offered a deal. I mean, make no mistake about it. She was offered a deal. She's now in a small prison. And my belief is before the 2028 elections, she will be released. The problem, I don't know that she's really considered, is, and this is my belief, and I've talked with some folks that are associated with law enforcement and were their entire career with law enforcement, looked at the files of Epstein, and they do not believe that it was a suicide. and I don't believe it was a suicide. And when Maxwell gets out of prison, she's a walking target. And I don't think she realizes that, okay, we can't have two suicides associated with the same person, but they both can die because she's always a threat to them. Always a threat.
Well, if they do what we talked about earlier and take over the country, right, which they're in the process of doing, they'll be untouchable anyway. So at that point, it really wouldn't matter, right? Right now, it matters because they have to keep her quiet until they've achieved their complete goal. So, but once they've done that, it doesn't matter what she's done, nothing she could do to hurt them anyway, nor would she be compelled to come in front of anybody once they take control. I've heard folks talk about, they're trying to make her into a victim, and I see that happening. However, if folks do their research and they see that she comes from the elites. She's always been an elite. Her father was filthy rich. Robert Maxwell was filthy rich. She was the youngest of 9 children. They had a 36 room mansion that she grew up in. She was his favorite. He mysteriously died the day before he was supposed to go to court, which he was guilty of stealing $460 million from the Mirrors Group pension fund over in England. In addition to that, he owed another $6 million to the bank that he defaulted on. And mysteriously, the night before, he fell off his boat and drowned. Some folks said it was suicide. And he was asked by his sons to come in the night before to prep for that meeting. He told them no. And lo and behold, he ended up going. So she matriculated to America after that because of the stain it cost her family name, which she hooked up with Jeffrey Epstein. And so folks need to understand she's always been from the elite class. She's always been rich. She wasn't some poor woman who was hoodwinked or bamboozled by this millionaire because her father was much richer than Jeffrey Epstein was. So that's who we're dealing with. She was a pedophile pimp. So was Jeffrey Epstein. So anybody's connected with that to that circle would have knew who they were dealing with. If you look at, there are flight logs, dozens of flight logs with Donald Trump on Jeffrey Epstein's plane. Whether it was going to other vacation sites or Epstein Island, he's on those logs. Now, he'll probably argue later that he landed, but he never got off the plane, right? It's similar to Bill Clinton. I didn't inhale, right? But he's on the logs. And you can see that in his book, How to Get Rich, on page 183. It states that Jeffrey Epstein, he described him as Jeffrey Epstein, the international man of mystery. I believe it was 1993 New York magazine article about Jeffrey Epstein, but Trump refers to him and with the same adjectives. And he says that Jeffrey, he's like Elvis. He's the only person that can call me, and my administrative assistants don't even ask Jeffrey who. That right there tells you how close they were. There's no way around saying that he wasn't a pedophile. That's my opinion, that Donald Trump is a pedophile. He's been a pedophile. He lets you know in some of his interviews who he prefers, right? He said in his book also with Jeffrey Epstein, let me be specific, and quoted, Epstein was a terrific guy and likes beautiful women, just like me, and likes many of them on the younger side. That's out of Trump's mouth. So he knows who Jeffrey, we'll just call him Jeffrey because Trump calls him Jeffrey. He knows what Jeffrey likes. He indulged in what Jeffrey likes.
Let's go back. There's a lot that's coming to light now that people may not know, but Jeffrey was a convicted sex felon before, and he served some time before. And Trump knew this and continued to associate with him. So it's not like Trump can say, oh, I didn't know. He did know. And, I said this on recent podcasts is that Epstein was arrested and put in jail during Trump's first term. Trump had the files in his possession, or could have had the files in his possession during his first term. Trump could have moved those files to Mar-a-Lago, since he moved a lot of other files to Mar-a-Lago, to prevent them from becoming public. And nothing says guilty more than hiding from the truth. And the truth is not putting those files out there. Nothing says guilty more than giving a known sex offender who got a 20 years sentence for sex trafficking stay in the spa. It all says guilty. Trump's guilty. There's other politicians are guilty, and I don't care what party they come from, they're guilty.
The funny thing is that the only thing that prompted him, in his words, to split with Jeffrey is that he stole a teenager from him. That's what made him pissed, not the pedophile habits that he had that they indulged in, but that he stole a teenager from him.
Right. And so that tells you that that's what Trump's been all his life. He's been a pedophile all his life, even before meeting Epstein.
I agree. I just don't understand how the so-called religious folks, the red hatters, who say that we understand that he's a whoremonger. He's had multiple wives. He's cheated on every one of his wives. He's a felon. He's a pedophile, but it's okay because the Lord sent him to us. That's what their definition of a savior is. I hate to see what the devil looks like.
I'm going to say the Lord didn't send Trump. It was the devil. You can go to church every Sunday and say, please forgive me for not doing anything about sex trafficking of underage girls. And then on Monday, you go out and you still don't do anything. And you go back Sunday and say, oh, please forgive me again. No, that's not the way the religion that I was taught. That's not the way it works.
I don't care if Jeffrey Epstein was murdered or hung himself in jail. I'm pissed off that he didn't get the full wrath, right, of what he deserved because of what he did. I would have wished that he would have stayed alive. And this goes for anybody else who participated. I wish the worst fate. If somebody can say, Jesus will forgive you, I'm not Jesus. If you raped or sodomized my daughter or my granddaughter or my sister, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to make sure you don't do that to anybody else's children. One other thing I want to hit on for folks to let folks know that not only do we post on YouTube, but we post shorts on TikTok. And on this past Monday, on August 11th, I posted a short on TikTok that was taken down because some of the red hats and the viewers complained to TikTok that I had mentioned the fact that I thought Trump was a pedophile and that his hirees, his cabinet made up of a lot of Didius, Combs folks, right? Those type of people who he made up, makes up his cabinet. And TikTok gave me a warning, took my video down, and told me that I had a warning I would get a strike if I mention it again. And I just want TikTok to know that I'm not backing down. This is a fight that I'm in it. It bothers me. It keeps me up at night. Every time I look at my grandkids, I wonder who's out there preying on them, and will I be around to be able to stop it? So this is a fight that's personal to me. And just because you wanted to elect a pedophile to the White House doesn't make it right.
And one last thing about this, Al, and I'm saying this about you and all the other people that are standing up against this illegal conduct by Trump and him taking over this country, is we are on the right side of history. Okay? We are on the right side, and he's on the wrong side. and people that support him are on the wrong side of history.
I agree. I thank you, Brother Painter, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Take care, my friend.
All right, take care. I want to thank folks for watching this episode of Al's Joint. Don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe, and leave your comments below. I want to know what you're thinking. Join me next Friday on my next episode of Al's Joint as we continue to fight to keep these far right-wing nuts and pedophiles from taking our country. Peace.
This episode of Al's Joint is brought to you by the Peabody Highlander 1975 through 1981 Class Reunion Committee.